Welcome, everybody. This is the Artisan Church All-Inclusive Podcast. My name is Reed. I'm the pastor of Artisan Church, joined by
Stephanie
and Rich.
We are so glad to be with you for another conversation. We're going to sit down and talk about relationships today. We want to talk about how relationships can be both beautiful and complicated, and especially when there are differences in our faith and what we believe, when that gets involved, whether it's between friends or it's partners or family members, navigating different beliefs about God and about our church or our spirituality. All of that can raise deep questions for us about our identity, about belonging, about what God says and wants for us in those relationships. So in this episode, we're going to explore how people of faith can engage in those differences with respect, with grace, with humility, while holding on to our commitment to following Christ all the way through. So let's jump right in. How did we get to this topic today, guys? I
think you're just picking hard ones. I mean, you've been on a roll, just going increasingly more difficult. You're going to try to push us to the point of failure, I think.
Oh, well.
That's okay.
So be it.
That's okay.
Yeah. All or nothing, I guess. This one, particularly thinking about the divisive time that we're in, there's a lot of room to think about. Probably a lot of examples in our own lives of people who have different belief systems, even within Christianity. And how do we navigate that? And what does God say about that? We know we're supposed to love God and we're supposed to love our neighbor, but then there gets to be kind of a balancing act, I think, when we get into what level of friendship or relationship or how can we delineate who is going to be in our inner circle, in our inner sphere, and so on and so forth. So that's what I was thinking about when we posted this topic, and then also in our most important relationships with our partners, and I know that all of us have experienced some differences, probably in our faith upbringing and in our current belief structure with our partner, because everybody's different, right? Everybody's got a little bit different take. And so maybe we can start by sharing some of those stories. And Rich, why don't you kick us off? What are you, where are you, let's talk about our personal, like our partner relationships, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that.
I don't mind. And I'm going to assume that Lisa doesn't mind. Well, having grown up in a Methodist environment, and I would say it was probably if there was ever a vanilla white toast version of Methodist faith, I probably was right there in the middle of it. It was as watered down and as non-convicting a church as you would ever hope to attend. If you don't want to feel threatened, that was the place to be. And my wife was...
that sounds pretty good.
It does. It's safe, right? I mean, it was, to the point of, lulling one into a sense of comfort and even sleep at times. So my wife was from a different faith sphere, in that they were highly evangelical, charismatic, and her parents had even been involved in what I would categorize as a cult. And I think I mentioned this on a previous podcast.
Yeah.
So her beliefs and her method of defending those beliefs was ingrained in her from a very young age. And there wasn't as much of gray area where we could come together and sort of say, I have doubts about this. Maybe we could talk about it. It was very black and white, binary. This is the word, and the word is the truth. And so that can be challenging. I I think that it was ultimately our love for each other that allowed us to overcome the differences and meet somewhere in the middle and grow together in faith, to the point where we're at now, where we're not, we're not in the charismatic, evangelical tent revival camp, of regular worship, and we're also, we need a little bit more spice in our religious, exposure
Mm-hmm.
than what I was getting as a child. So
Yeah.
so
Well, that's good.
the answer is love. The answer is always love.
You love birds.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's actually so beautiful. I really love that. But I imagine that was probably pretty tough at times, getting to that point.
What you're really saying is, with the personality that I've seen from you, Rich, I bet you could be a real pain in the patootie sometimes. And that's true. It was. I challenged a lot of her beliefs. But, she was such a great partner to have because her grace was much greater than mine. And so she helped me to come along in ways that I hadn't explored. And I think I allowed her the flexibility without judgment of being able to maybe question things that she hadn't questioned before in her own faith.
Mm.
And we both grew because of it.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get to stay married this week.
Well, that's good. I can relate a little bit to the back and forth and the I guess the kind of finding somewhat of a middle ground as far as where we decided our faith tradition would land. Because I was raised Southern Baptist, and Jeanette, my wife, was raised Catholic, devout, and her family is still very involved in the Catholic
That's
Church.
a pretty big delta. I mean, it can be on certain issues, very big delta.
Sure, and I would say in my upbringing, I knew very little of the Catholic Church. That wasn't something that we talked about a whole lot as far as beliefs or differences in theology and the history, church history. Learning church history is so interesting. If you're interested in any of this stuff, it is fascinating, and that really unlocked a lot for me. And I'm really grateful. In Jeanette's family, everybody is Catholic, and even people who married in converted to Catholicism. So we're really outsiders that were a part of the Presbyterian Church. But Jeanette had, and I didn't pull her away from the Catholic Church. I just want to put that out there. She has her own mind and her own faith journey, and she had kind of diverged from it. And then when we knew we were going to be together, we started looking for some places to grow in our faith, where we could both kind of feel comfortable. So we found a place that has some tradition. It has some, liturgy and some common practices, and then it also has an openness and kind of the progressive and the forward-thinking stuff that I was latching onto at the time, and so that's where we landed where we did. As far as our faith tradition, I don't know. I'm not going to speak for Jeanette. I don't know if she calls herself a Presbyterian. She's a member, but and maybe part of our journey together leads us to find that the denominations mean less and less to us as time goes on, because it's all about relationships. It's all about people and loving people rather than putting them into boxes and categories. But
I think that's a really key point, maybe that you're hitting on right there. That, at least in my experience, the deeper you go into your faith journey, the closer you get to our Savior, the less you realize that the differences matter. They don't matter. And the overarching theme that's coming out of the Bible is what matters.
Yeah.
And if you encounter roadblocks that are being put up that focus on those differences, to me, that's a clear warning sign. That's an indicator, as we used to say in my old profession, is an indicator of activity of danger, Will Robinson. If the roadblocks are going up, then that's maybe something to be wary of and to take into account.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some of the best fruit of kind of growing through that has been that I have great relationship with my my in-laws, and hello, Susan and Stephen, if you're listening. I don't know if they do, but anyway, I'm so grateful that we can have dialogue about faith subjects, and we can talk about Scripture and what they're learning about, and our respective faith journeys with respect for one another, and that has been mutual, and that has grown over time. I don't think I could understate that. It really, that's been a beautiful thing about, well, just getting a little older and finding a little more humility and finding a little more respect over the time that we've known each other for one another's beliefs. But that doesn't always happen. So I recognize that that's taken some growth on both sides of the aisle there.
It's also a framework of going into it too. I mean, I have close in the past. I've had close friends that were Catholic, and close friends that were Jewish, and close friends that were Mormon. Now, if you were to, that sounds like the beginning of a joke.
Yeah.
But
all walked into a park.
Exactly. And what was very helpful in those relationships, was to not talk about religion. But aside from that, if it did come up, was to look at where we had overlap rather than to look at where there was white space. And so to sort of focus on all of the aspects that were similar. And not only that, I've had very close friends and colleagues that were Muslim. And there's a lot of overlap there. So it's, there, in a society and a world that is ever increasingly putting emphasis on the other and the difference and the division between us, it's always, I think, helpful to look at how we are alike. What do we share, and how can we love each other because of that shared knowledge?
Yeah. It sounds like building the relationship first is key. I mean, but this is also going to kind of veer us into the other side, is depending on what kind of relationship we're talking about. There are a lot of people who would say, oh no, it's very, very important to me that I pick a partner or a spouse or a best friend who shares my beliefs.
Ducks pick ducks.
Yeah, and so it's I think it's easier for us to be a little bit more tolerant and hold space for those differences if it's someone that we work with or a buddy we see, once or twice a month. If it's someone that you're going to share your most intimate life experiences with, I think a lot of people, that's where it gets a little bit more tricky.
If you're forming a tribe with someone, you want to know, where do we stand? Are we together on ABC issues? No, what's the most important issues and things like that? Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's not, no relationship is easy if you're going to be in that kind of relationship. I mean, anyone who's married, I'm sure, can attest to that. It's like you're spending your life with someone. It's not always easy because you have differences across the board. It's not just about faith differences. It could be like, well, this person likes to stay up late and watch TV, and the other person likes to go to bed early. The thermostat needs to be at 67 versus 74, whatever. But
preach.
I prefer it warmer, but let's not even go down that road. I don't want to offend anyone.
Some people that aren't in the room.
There are some subjects that are too controversial for this podcast.
Yeah.
The thermostat may be.
Right. That's a bridge too far.
Yeah. Oof. I don't know. But yeah, like there's those kinds of differences, and then you compound them over time, and then it's tough. But going into a relationship with a difference in faith, that makes it even harder, I think. So, yeah, one of the questions we had on the sheet was, how we can hold differences without division, and I think that you both were talking about building that relationship, like Reed, you and with your in-laws over time. You built on that over time through building the relationship. but I don't know how that. Well, I do kind of know a little bit of how that works with my own experience.
Part of it was time.
Yeah, time, because it takes time to build that relationship and to build that trust and to feel comfortable asking, like, what do Catholics think about this issue, or what do Protestants think about this issue? If you don't feel comfortable with that person, you probably wouldn't ask those questions.
Jagged stones don't become smooth with one day at the beach.
Right. Ooh, that's nice.
Ooh.
I like that.
Thank you. Trademark Rich Green.
I was gonna say, is that an original Richism?
It is right now.
I like it.
That it's not just that is a classic form. I'm going to bring in some military training here. That is a classic school of thought for conflict resolution, which is to find the small aspects where your tribe and my tribe overlap and we have commonality, and to focus on that so that we can say, well, we agree on this. What else can we agree on? And to expand it from there. And if nothing else, it opens the door for the dialogue and the communication to be able to express yourself and your beliefs without fear of judgment, because you've already found that common ground.
Right.
I have a tangent. That reminds me of the show American Pickers, which I'm not like a real big fan, but I know that when they go in,
It's about rhinoplasty.
no.
Different kind of picker.
Oh, okay.
These are the guys who
Sorry.
these are the guys who go into like old barns where people have hoarded stuff and try to buy stuff so that they can resell it.
Oh.
Okay. So
Lisa would call those plunderers. Yes.
yeah. So they go and they I don't know. It's a show. I don't know why I thought of this, but anyway, they go in and they almost every episode they meet some kind of curmudgeon-y, kind of crotchety old person that doesn't want to let go of any of their treasures, which are usually like motorcycles and old gas station signs and stuff like that. And then they go in and they find like the little army figurine or something, the tiniest little thing, and they say, well, would you be willing to sell us this little bottle cap or whatever? And if they can get a sale, if they can get a purchase on that one little thing, then they've broken the ice. That's what they call it, breaking the ice. And then, in an hour's time, it just opens up. And then, the whole world of possibilities. Now you'll sell me the treasured motorcycle or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it's the same thing, kind of finding some common ground, like finding a little bit of safety, and we can do this little thing together. So now we can even talk. We can even approach the idea of doing.
And we see value in even some of the small things that you have held as valuable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's very emotional.
It is.
I couldn't wait to see how American Pickers was going to relate to what we were talking about.
Conflict resolution.
I was like, where is this going to go? But that actually makes a lot of sense, because that they are showing that they're willing to invest in the person, essentially. It's like, I'm willing to invest a little bit, and that builds trust.
Pastor Reed, I see a sermon from this.
Ooh.
There's a sermon topic on building commonality. So. Hashtag come to Artisan Church.
A plug for, better than rhinoplasty. That could be a sermon illustration too, but different subject.
Yes.
I like that. That's pretty cool. That's a cool observation.
Well, I feel like we kind of maybe derailed you from talking about relationships a little bit.
Oh no, that's fine. I was actually trying to think of how I wanted to approach it first, but my experience with this, I have a few different examples, but my current partner, Jeff, my boyfriend of almost 3 years now, he and I are not in the exact same space in our faith journeys. I think he would call himself agnostic. And I've talked a little bit about it on here before, when we were talking about belonging before believing.
Mm-hmm.
he would call himself agnostic, I think, because he doesn't outright reject the idea of God or Jesus, but he's not fully committed to identifying as a believer. And maybe he will one day, maybe he won't. I don't know. And I think what has given me the most peace about that, because it's not always easy for me, but what's given me peace is that that is his relationship with God, and it's really not my place to try to control it. We have a lot of really good discussions about religion and Christianity, and he asks me questions, and a lot of times I don't know the answer, but but I will share what I do know, and we'll talk about, the sermon, if he comes to church, which he does. He does attend Artisan occasionally when he can, and we'll talk about it. And neither of us judge the other. We don't judge each other, because there was a time in my life where I think I was in the same place that he's in, where I had a lot of doubt, a lot of questions, and just feeling like I'm just not sure if I'm ready to say that I'm a believer. I considered myself just more curious than anything for a long time, and it wasn't any other person who made me feel like, quote unquote, ready to be a believer. I think that was just God. That was something between me and God, and there were people who guided me, and so I just try to be that for Jeff if he wants, and he guides me too. He may not realize it, but he asks some pretty tough questions sometimes, and I found that if I don't try to like dismiss that, or if I try to take that as a challenge, then it doesn't do any good. But if I listen to his question, I think, well, no, he's right. Like, what's that all about? And then that prompts me to read the Bible and do a little bit of research and talk to my other friends who are believers. And then I learn something out of it too. And that deepens my faith. And then I bring it back to him and I say, well, this is what I found out. And then that sparks another really good discussion. And I think that, I wasn't really sure where else I was going with that.
Well,
but
I just want to, first of all, thank you for sharing that
my
personal
pleasure.
Part of your relationship. And thank you, Jeff, for being just a really cool guy.
He is a cool guy.
He is.
And I love that Jeff comes here and feels comfortable. I think we already talked about that. Yeah. And if he didn't feel comfortable, he wouldn't come. So, and also, I just want to affirm.
No matter how good the music is.
Right.
And it is really good.
Hashtag come to Artisan Church for the music. Stay for the sermon.
And snacks.
Yeah. And snacks. And I just also want to say that what you're describing sounds like a very healthy and beautiful way to approach the differences in your belief systems and whatnot. I love it. I don't have anything. I don't have.
It's being willing to put the other above the tribe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you're right.
And that's important, is to be able to step outside of the tribe and approach this from empathy and being able to understand where the other person is coming from and being open to that. It's super important, and it's healthy.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, honestly, it all comes down to I love Jeff, and he's my partner in life, and I don't want to do life without him. So him not being at the same place in his faith journey that I am, I don't think, I don't want to say this and make it sound bad, but that's not worth throwing away the relationship. And also, we have a son together, so that if it was just like, oh well, I can't do this because you're not a quote unquote Christian, the way we think of a Christian, I feel like that would be a really poor choice on my part to just throw away the relationship and the unity that we have as parents. I couldn't do that. Now I do want to also say that what I've chosen to do is not prescriptive for anyone else. I know that there's a lot of people, like I said, that's very important to them, and I'm not saying that they're wrong. But that's just my story.
I would say there's probably a lot of things that we can't even name that have fallen into place to make yours and Jeff's relationship work.
Oh, yeah.
Way
lots.
beyond what we're talking about today. But a couple of the things that I want to sort of affirm in your describing your conversations and everything. I learned a new word this week from a theologian, Walter Brueggemann, and he was talking about relationships. He was talking actually about relationship with God, but it applies to all relationships. And for any of them to work, there has to be a level of humility, and in that humility, it allows for that back and forth that you were describing. And the word that I learned this week is dialogical.
Ooh.
Relationships need to be dialogical. We
Okay.
can talk about things. We can go back and forth with one another without starting a war. We can.
Is that an irregardless type of word, or is that a real word?
I think it might be real.
Wow. That's
dialogical.
Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Isn't it fun to say?
Yes,
Please,
Dialogical.
somebody check us on that. I don't know.
You are so dialogical.
I like that. That's a new one for me too.
Yeah.
I like that.
But just that you can keep the conversation going, I think says a whole lot about you personally, and also about what makes differences okay and also good. Differences are good. They make life interesting, and they help us to learn, and they help us to examine and sharpen our own values and our own, what.
God could have created humanity so that we were all of one mind, and that mind would never have been exploratory and have differences with each other, and even with the Creator. He gave us free will and the ability to explore that free will. And so we should count that as a blessing, that we have the ability to engage with each other and challenge each other and hopefully do it always in love and compassion with each other.
And life sure would have been boring if we were all the same.
It would be.
Yeah.
I used to imagine God, our divine creator, creating us maybe at least partly for God's own entertainment.
His own ant farm.
Right? Yeah. Which is not
Like The Sims.
Yes.
Anyway, that would have been boring
Yes.
if we'd all been the same.
Have you ever played the game Lemmings?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it was a game from like the early 90s, I want to say.
remember that.
I'm going to date myself. But basically you had to solve puzzles by moving these little guys around and having them do certain things to get to the end of the screen. And if you chose wrong, one would go off a cliff. If one went off the cliff, they all went off the cliff, and you lost that game. So, yeah, being lemmings would not be fun.
Mm-hmm.
No, and we wouldn't last very long.
Nathan, that was for you. I'm sure you've played lemmings.
So maybe it's helpful if we kind of talk about what the Bible says about this subject, and I know it will be. And there's lots of scripture that talks about relationships and about loving one another and about how we deal with conflict with one another. I think probably the core verse that I thought of, especially from my upbringing, that speaks to who we're going to make a life with, who we're going to partner with, is 2 Corinthians 6:14, which says, and I'm reading from the NRSV. Wait a minute. NRSV 6:14. This is 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be mismatched with unbelievers. For what partnership is there between righteousness and lawlessness? Or what fellowship is there between light and darkness? What agreement does Christ have with Belial? Or
Belial.
Belial?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
I think it was an idol God.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is, we can talk about that in a sec. Or what does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement does the temple of God, what agreement has the temple of God with idols? And that goes, I went on through verse 16, because it's that verse on its own, on its face, which would often be used to shut down relationships. Oh, you can't marry that person because they are Muslim, or they are Jewish, or they are not Christian. So that would be the unequally yoked is a reference to, I think it's in Deuteronomy or somewhere, where it talks about not putting animals together on the same yoke on the farm, because that's going to cause problems. And there's some wisdom in there for agricultural purposes, but here it's been used for people, and in their relationship. The idea is that you don't want to be partnered with someone when the two of you are going to go in different directions, and it's just going to fail.
And I've heard that verse about being unequally yoked. I've had it said to me about my relationship, and at the time I didn't know enough about the Bible to really be able to defend myself. Mm-hmm. But correct me if I'm wrong, but now that I have a little bit more knowledge about it and I have a little bit more context, to me that seems more like he's saying, and Paul is the one writing that, right? Okay. It seems like Paul is saying more of like Christians and pagans
yes,
marrying or whatever, or spending life together, which is, and I'm not saying it's better or worse, but that's a little bit different than I guess my situation, or a situation where it's a believer and a non-believer, because it's worshiping two different entities might be a little bit trickier than one person worshiping and the other person just not worshiping. But then again, I don't know. It's just I think the context is also important, and the historical context as well.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound like I'm trying to excuse myself, but to me, that didn't ring true for me when it was told to me, because I was like, well, but I'm not going in a different direction. We're both going in the same direction. We don't have to be believing the exact same things in order to go the same direction.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that as a pastor?
Yeah. So historical context is really important. This is written by Paul. It's a letter to the church at Corinth. This is 1st century, and we're talking about a place where there was pagan worship, and I'm not an expert on 1st century Corinth, but the church was in a very diverse environment where there were people who were worshiping other gods and idols, and in that world was also a lot of debauchery and extreme diversions from what we would consider maybe what's culturally acceptable with sex and all sorts of stuff. And so first thing, 2 Corinthians and 1 Corinthians and the entire New Testament was not written to you or me. That's the first thing to notice, is that it was written to a specific group of people in a particular time, and so we have to hold that when we want to look at what the heart of that truth is for us today. And I think a lot of what you're saying about people going different directions, if you were seeking the world of pleasure and fulfillment and the riches and the everything that the world can provide, that's going to go starkly contrast to this 1st century Christian community of faith that has decided to basically live a communal lifestyle. They're pouring all of their stuff into one pot. So there's an economic sort of issue going on here too. Mm-hmm. They're sharing everything. They're sharing meals together. they're aligning with the message of Christ, and that Christ is God and their Savior. And so more than just the cultural, the economic, the religious differences, there's a wide gaping divide between the pagans and the Christians here. And so I think that's where this message, it gets thrown around, but if you don't know all of those things, and there's more than I'm not sharing very well, but if you don't know all of that behind it, then you don't get the heart of it. You don't.
And Paul was, correct me if I'm wrong, he was kind of low-key advocating for not even getting married. He basically said, if you can't be as blessed as I was and not be interested in any of that stuff, then I guess this is the best way to go forward, kind of thing.
And that's because Paul thought that the end of the world was going to happen at any second. He was coming to all conversations with a rush, a heat. Jesus is going to come back, not just in our lifetimes. He could come back tomorrow. And so if you're in good shape, there's really no need to get married because we don't need to worry about that. Let's just tell the good news to as many people as possible. That's the most important thing. And so that's why he was running around with his hair on fire all over the known world, putting himself in danger and shipwrecks and prison and all of this stuff, because that was his worldview that he was acting on. So it reads a little bit different a couple thousand years later.
Yes, it does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to get your take on that, because I'm still learning. I'm learning every day more and more, and going back to what we were saying before, we might have been talking about this before we were recording, but as we learn more and lean deeper into our faith, we learn that a lot of those interpretation differences and those denominational differences don't seem to matter as much. And I think that's exactly my point, is once you really get into it and really get close to it and learn the context, other people's opinions in the here and now and how they think you should be interpreting a certain something, it matters less and less to me. It matters if it's someone that I care about, and of course I don't want to offend anyone and I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. But I think we get so hung up on the interpretation and how we should apply it to other people.
Yeah. Well, there is some wisdom in there, right? Not to be ignored. And I don't think dismissing the entire passage is the right thing to do either.
No.
And you made a really good point about the fact that the context of his advice would be the equivalent of a disciple of Christ, a Christian today, getting into a relationship with someone who is a Satan worshiper. The exact opposite, where you have like a fundamental difference in your faith to the point where there's very little overlap. We're not talking about the nuances of Catholicism and being a Protestant. We're talking about like just the two things just are diametrically opposed. And there's that I think that the advocacy was there's nothing good that can come from that on either side of it, because it's just going to be ruin, in the relationship, and it's going to test your faith, and it's going to, so.
Yeah, I think the greater message is to just to do an examination of who you're aligning with and being aware, right? Being aware of where they are headed and where they're guiding. They're going to be guiding you. As someone who's closer to you is going to have more influence on you and your decisions that you make, and how you live life and what you spend time on and things like that. And I don't know anything about Satan worship really.
Thank goodness.
Much to speak of. I probably should brush up a little, but I think that to throw anyone out without knowing them, without breaking the ice, there's there's an there's an openness, there's a grace for any relationship that I think is the overarching message of Jesus and Christ, to say, if it's possible, live at peace with everyone, for one, and then bring that humbleness, bring that gentleness that we're called to embody in all relationships. Love is patient, love is kind, and then if that's returned, then you're a little bit farther down the road with someone.
And I guess the other thing that's and we talked about this before we started rolling today, but in 1 Corinthians there is some redemption here for that, in that Paul talks about the fact that people who, if one of the other in a couple that is married is not a believer, that doesn't condemn that person or the believer themselves, that they're redeemed in the faith of the other, just as their children would be. And I think that's important because
Do you have that scripture reference? I'm
do,
sorry to
but-
interrupt.
Yeah, but I don't. Here's the thing: I don't know which version of the Bible this came from. So there's a
Okay.
disclaimer. So if you have a different translation or it uses different words, then please don't. You can
I can
put
read.
it in the comments.
Okay.
So it's if any brother has a wife who is not a believer and she is willing to live with him, he must not divorce her. And if a woman has a husband who is not a believer and he is willing to live with her, she must not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband has been sanctified through his wife, and the unbelieving wife has been sanctified through her believing husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. So there's redemption right there.
There is. I also hear just almost like bylaws of that are written into. It's very lawyery sounding, isn't it? Like
It is. Well, they were writing the rules basically back then to sort of set down the ground rules.
sure, and that's helpful, and it's complicated
Yes.
because relationships are that.
What an unenviable place to be put in as a disciple in first century Christendom, to have to
that'd be a lot.
unravel all of this with Christ's wisdom.
Yeah. Well, and you made a good point earlier, Rich, before we started recording, that what you just read came from Corinthians, and what Reed read is also from Corinthians. Are they from the same book or the same?
Well,
or for 1 and 2.
One and two, same author.
So, yeah. But they, on the surface, if you don't have that context and if you don't have the deeper understanding, they sound contradictory.
They did when I was reading them last
Right.
night. So,
Yeah. So it can be tricky when we just take things at face value and don't do a little deeper study on it.
Right. And when you find, as I shared earlier before we were recording, when you find those contradictions and conflicts in Scripture, the best place to start unraveling it and finding out where the truth is to hold it up against the teaching of Jesus. That is where that's where we measure everything. So you'll find laws in the Old Testament that we don't adhere to anymore, and it's really helpful to look at Christ's message, Christ's sermons and his teaching, parables, and hold those up against all of the laws, because Christ said he didn't come to do away with the law, but to fulfill it. And to sum those up, love God and love others is the very beginning of the starting place for that.
And that's so important to remember, I think, because it gets, at least for me, it can get very overwhelming trying to sort through all the stuff. But having that place to go back to, which is Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, it's very helpful for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people. There was one other question on here that I wanted to make sure we talked about, if that's okay.
Yeah.
There was a question here that says, how can we set healthy boundaries without cutting people off?
Yeah. I was looking at that one
Yeah,
too.
I want to make sure we get that one.
We've talked about being inclusive very well today, I think. But but what about when there is harm and healthy boundaries is probably a phrase that is growing in popularity right now, and we've maybe heard that from different places, but it is it has a place, right? Healthy boundaries in our relationships. I think that's a great place to say there is a spectrum of how we integrate with one another or stay in relationship with one another, and it's a great way to say, in our divisive culture, you are not just my best friend or my enemy. You're in my life, but you're not going to do things that harm me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to say, what's an example? I'm not going to respond to your texts every single time, or I'm not going to follow you on social media, even though I love you and I want you in my life, and God loves you. So maybe we could talk about some more examples of healthy boundaries.
Intent plays a lot into that. If the person that you're engaging with has the intent of just healthy discourse, that's one thing. But if their intent is to break you down or to cut your legs out from underneath your faith, well, that's not taking your well-being and your health and your faith journey into account. It's not respectful. And so in those kinds of cases, I would think, and maybe I'm a bit more gruff about it than others, but I have no problem with saying, hey, that's not part of who I am, and I don't really, we can talk about other things, but if hurt is what you're aiming at, you're not going to bait me into this discussion. So
That's a great point. And I actually have another example that reminded me of. This was before I met Jeff. I dated someone for a few weeks who originally said he was agnostic, but open to learning and stuff. But as we had some of our discussions, it became clear that he was more interested in proving me wrong and doing exactly what you said and just taking every opportunity to argue. And at that point, I said, look, this isn't fun. Like, this might be fun for you, but this isn't fun for me, and it's actually hurtful. And it was hard because I actually really liked the guy at the time. But now I think back, I'm like, why did I even waste my time? But you're right. The intention is, that's extremely important. And maybe he didn't even really know that was what he was doing. Maybe he was working some things out on his own that he just, we just weren't compatible. But yeah, it's if you feel like you have to be put in a position to defend yourself or your mental health or your physical health or anything, that's where a boundary needs to be placed.
And the very nature of faith is going to be unprovable. That's what defines it as faith.
Sure.
So, if at some point in discussion, excuse me, you're trying to find common ground with this person to make headway so that you can come together, and the discussion or the debate or whatever it is, the engagement switches. One of the things that people will do to be hurtful is turn that laser focus on you. You are deficit because you can't see how silly it is that you believe this way, and then it's your problem. There's a warning sign, and you shouldn't feel bad about being self-protective in that sort of situation, because we all have our faith, and it means something, and it's important to us, and and you don't have to be nasty in return. You can just You can just sort of disengage and
right when it becomes a personal attack, belittling someone else to win an argument, that's not about finding common ground. It's not about finding truth anymore. It's about winning. It's about ego, and it's about silencing something that's different from what you believe. And that's harmful because we believe in the value of all people and that they have a voice. They ought to be heard. And when, again, we should do no harm. And so when someone else is harming someone else, we don't want to elevate that voice. We don't want to give it any more power. So I like your approach to just saying, ignore, walk away. I think that's the best way to shut it down. And that's kind of sometimes the opposite of what we want to do. Somebody punches you in the face, figuratively, with their words, then there's a want to react in kind, but it does no good sometimes. But we can control what we give attention to. That's kind of how I think of healthy boundaries. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I had a therapist one time to explain boundaries to me, like a tennis court, and it's like you can control what you do on your side of the tennis court, but what the other person does, you can't jump over the fence and hit the ball for them too. So you just focus on your side of the tennis court.
And the definition of where your tennis court ends and theirs begins is really important, because then you know this is beyond my control. I can't do this.
That's a great point, and that's where you have to, I guess, discern what that is for you, because there are some people who might see opposition as a challenge. It's like, oh, okay, well now I just got to double down, and I really got to make this person believe me or whatever. So that's someone who maybe doesn't know where the boundary is.
Anybody who's ever been on a debate on the internet knows exactly what that feels like. So, just saying.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. I love that we can sit down and talk about this hard stuff together. And grateful for you guys.
Likewise.
Star Wars.
Were you getting nervous? We're getting close to the end, and we hadn't talked about.
It was an automatic response.
The droids got along really well.
Yes, they never
follow
had.
their model.
Exactly.
Well, there was the people that believed in the Jedi and
That's
the people
right.
that didn't,
That's
or the
right.
Force or whatever.
Why didn't we talk about that?
Yes, the dark side.
Yeah,
Okay.
Han Solo didn't believe there was some mysterious, all-powerful force. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, people are complicated. Relationships are complicated. It's hard to know how to interact sometimes, or who's good and who's bad. But faith differences don't have to mean broken relationships, and they don't have to mean that we completely shut people out of our lives. In fact, as we talked about, they can be an invitation to deeper love and to learning more about one another and about ourselves, and even lead to trusting God in new ways. So just be encouraged. Keep the conversations going, everybody. Maybe not always on social media, but keep them going.
Face-to-face is always better.
So much better. Yeah.
And come see us at Artisan Church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
come see us.
Please do.
Come ask us about this. Come educate us about it. We are admittedly not experts, but enjoy the conversation, and hope that you all do too. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back again with another hard one in no time. Take care.
Bye.